Hello CNC students. In the past we've done a lot of videos in our lab where we're actually showing machine functions, and even in our classroom where we're showing some of the basics of machining. I thought we'd start a new series and on our Mastercam file. So we're going to go over some basics of Mastercam. We're going to start with just the interfaces, how to draw simple geometry, how to create solids. Then we're going to move farther into advanced features, toolpathing, creating programs, and everything we need to know to make Mastercam fully usable in both mill and lathe sections. So I hope you enjoy. In this video, we're going to cover the user interface for Mastercam. Currently, we're using Mastercam 2023 with updates coming in annually from Mastercam. There's a variety of tabs and buttons and toolbars on the Mastercam screen. It's important to note that all of these are customizable. They can be moved. They can be anchored. Once you get used to using Mastercam on a consistent basis, you can establish this display any way you feel comfortable. This is the normal opening operating system, the view that we would normally get. So let's just go through the normal views and take a look at some of the functions and features of Mastercam. As in most Microsoft products, you're going to see a group of buttons at the top of your screen, including New, Save, Open, Print, Save As, and Zip to Go. You have an Undo and a Redo button, and again, this Quick Access toolbar is completely customizable for whichever Quick Access buttons you want on this tab. If we drop down to this set of tabs on the top of the screen, let's start at the beginning in the File screen. You'll notice that the same shortcuts are available here with a few additional. So we have a New File, Open File, Save File, Save As, a Zip to Go, and a Print. It's worth noting on this screen too that there's also a Help button for quick access help and a community page that will allow you to access the Mastercam community to ask questions or view downloads. So let's return to this first tab here, the Home screen. And we're just going to go through and quickly define what these screens do. You'll see that we have a cut, copy, and paste. We can cut, copy, and paste images and geometry using these functions. We have a copy image. Allows us to take a standard image of a file that we may have. Extremely useful in setup sheets or transferring just pictures of projects that we're working on. We have an attributes page. So when we draw lines, circles, surfaces, solids, they come with a distinct set of attributes: color, size, width, style. These are customizable here, but these screens are completely dependent on how you set those files. The screen we're going to talk about is the delete screen. So we can delete entities. Now this is referring to geometry, of course. We can delete duplicate entities. We'll talk more about that in detail. You have your display screen, display tabs here. Analyze entities. It's often required that we can analyze the distance or properties. We can analyze distances between geometry. We can even analyze toolpaths in this screen. And we'll go through this further as we start creating geometry. On the right's a unique thing that Mastercam has. where there's customizable add-ins that have actually even come from customers that have been brought into Mastercam, and we'll talk about those later. Our next tab over is our wireframe tab. So wireframe is a term for two-dimensional geometry. So in this screen, we'll create things such as points, bolt circles, and bolt circle patterns. We'll talk about that when we get to the milling section. We can create lines, simple lines with endpoints, lines parallel to each other, lines perpendicular to each other. We can create circles with center points. We can create arcs that have 3 points, arcs that are tangent to both lines and other arcs. We can create some manual splines. We can create basic shapes too. A silhouetted boundary, we use it in the lathe as we do the turn profile. We can create rectangles of different varieties. In this tab, there's a rectangle, a rectangular shape. We can create polygons, ellipses, and helixes. So that's a very useful tool we'll use a lot in creating geometry. We can create curves on surfaces or solids with our curves tab, and we'll talk about that more. Often in Mastercam, to create a tool path, you'll need a two-dimensional geometry, even if it's on a three-dimensional shape, for the tool to follow. And our last tab is the modify, where we can trim or break lines, divide lines. We can create chamfers and also fillets. We will obviously use this a lot when we're creating geometry and creating our part files. Our next tab is our surface. So we have the ability to make simple surfaces, and we'll talk more the difference between a surface and a solid. I think it's important just to note at this time, a surface is it's like putting a skin on a geometric shape. It has no thickness or mass or volume. It's simply a skin that gets pulled over the top. So we can create simple surfaces like cylinders, blocks, spheres, or cones. We can create surfaces from existing geometry. We can do that from solids, from flat boundaries. We can create lofted surfaces or sweep surfaces. We'll do this quite often too, although solids has greatly replaced much of the surfacing that was previously done in all computer-aided manufacturing and computer-aided drafting softwares. We can modify our surfaces in the next block over, or we can trim, we can fill, and we can extend. And we can establish our normals for the normal direction which our surface is facing. Our next tab is our solids tab. This is a much more common feature. We're going to talk in detail in solids. We'll do a couple of videos specifically just on solids. Solids are preferred. They're preferred in machining. It allows you the ability to pick geometry that's at certain depths, and it understands the entire solid that it sees and recognizes, unlike a surface. So solid does have weight, mass, and volume. So solids are much more user-friendly in both design and tool pathing. So there's simple solids, just like we saw with surfaces, a cylinder, a block, a sphere, a cone. We can extrude solids. We'll do a lot of that, and revolving solids. And there's many other types of operations we could do to create solids. We could also take our surfaces and create a solid from those surfaces. So it'll recognize its boundaries and create a solid inside the boundaries from the surface. We could create fillets and chamfers on solids, and we can trim them and draft. There's a lot of different possibilities for what we could do with solids, and we're going to work a lot with solids. Our next tab over is the model prep. So in this screen, we can modify existing solids. We can move them. We can move their features. We can extend them. We can remove certain faces. We can change the colors of those faces. There's a lot we can do to modify solids. Here's our layout where we can align to planes. We can move solids, orient them, and move positioning. And the color, which really just is a graphics feature that allows us to set different colors on faces so they're easily recognizable when you're creating maybe assemblies or when you're creating tool paths on a certain solid face. Next tab is a mesh screen, which is it's similar. We're not going to talk too much about mesh frames. I think solid modeling is a lot more conducive to tool pathing. So we're just going to go, we can do all the same things we saw in surfaces and solids. We could create simples, create from nothing, and modify. But we're going to use solids much more than the mesh. We also have a drafting tab. The drafting tab is where we create features on our drawing that are not geometric. So they're not lines, arcs, or solids. For example, we have dimensioning. So in this dimension box, we could do all of our dimensioning, horizontal, vertical, circular dimensions, angular dimensions, parallel dimensions. And Mastercam came out a few years ago with the smart dimensioning tab, which we'll use some. We can simply pick a feature. It will recognize the length of the feature and it will snap a dimension from that feature. Again, very customizable and a very quick way to do dimensioning. I think it's important to remember here that Mastercam was built as a computer-aided manufacturing software, not a CAD software. So to do a lot of prints and to do a lot of dimensioning and set up prints in Mastercam is a little bit cumbersome, but it is still very doable. They're very good tools to have. I think in Machine Shop, we'll see that it's a great way to create setup sheets or setup instructions, or maybe even in process. If you're doing a certain operation on a part, you can provide a print for that operation and have the operator check and process. Here's some annotation tab where we can create some notes. We can create a whole table. We can do some cross hatching and create leaders. We'll probably do a video specifically just on dimensioning and look at some of the different features and how customizable they are. We can regenerate a lot of our drafting here, and we can modify our drafting here. Transform is a great tool in Mastercam. We're going to do quite a bit of this. You'll find out that using this tool will save you a lot of time and effort. It allows you to take existing geometry, copy it, paste it, move it, translate it, rotate it, even project to other surfaces. So in the transform page, we have a position block. We can do dynamic positioning. We can translate geometry from any direction in X, Y, and Z. We can translate a geometry onto a plane. We can rotate it. We can project geometry from one position to another. It's often used in engraving. We can move geometry to the origin. We can mirror the geometry, and we can roll the geometry. Another good function is the offset function. If you have an existing feature and you want to offset it to the inside or the outside of that geometry, you can use a simple one-click button here to offset your geometry. A useful tool that will save you lots of time. We can do layouts and nesting arrays. This is used often with wire EDMs, multiple different machines where we're doing nesting of parts onto a sheet. We can also change the size of a part by stretching it or scaling it. And we often will use the scale function as we're trying to get a certain pattern or design on a certain size. We can scale that. We're not going to really discuss art very much. We're not going to use art. Art is a great function and has some place, definite place in machining and manufacturing, but we're going to deal with really mill and lathe work and not so much creating art. The machine tab is an interesting tab. We can pick, we'll come back to this in 1 second, but we can pick what type of machine we're using, a mill, a lathe, a wire EDM, a router, or doing simply design. Each of our machines have control definitions. So as we call up a certain machine, we can alter the control that's being used. We can alter the machine, how it's established. As we know, there is a multitude of different types of machine configurations at this point, and Mastercam can't post correctly if it doesn't know the configuration of the machine. So machine definition can come in. We can set material in our mill tool manager. This simulator, which we're not going to deal with much on this page, we're going to actually do it in our toolpath screen. But once we create geometry and create a toolpath, we can backplot that geometry, that toolpath. In other words, we can just see where the tool is headed. We can verify, which is a great tool, which allows us to create stock and actually see the stock being cut and removed. It will tell us a lot about if we're taking too much material or our tool holder is hitting our part. These are very, very important to use, especially in multi-axis. And we can simulate, where simulation is just a growth from verify, where simulation actually can simulate your entire machine and the motions it's made in that entire machine. And we'll talk about that when we do some toolpaths. We can also generate our code. So G1 is generate is how we post our programs. Once we have our toolpath, we can generate the code from the post processor, and we'll deal with that more. Setup sheets is a great feature in Mastercam. Allows you to give information to your setup and operator. Allows them to know exactly what tools you're using, what operations they're doing. Can tell cycle times. It's a great great tool. We're gonna talk about that because I think this is probably underutilized. And it should be utilized more. We can do machine simulations. Again, we're fully simulating the machine in function. And we can do some automatic tool pathing. At one time, that was called feature-based machining. So we can automatic tool path. We're not going to do much of this, but there's definitely is a purpose. And the last is our view screen, where we can zoom and unzoom. We can look at different graphic views. We're going to do this a lot as we flip from view to view. We'll talk about that more as we do geometry. We can change the appearance of our material or our three-dimensional object. We can shade it, outline it, wireframe it. Toolpaths, this one is set on advanced display, which is what I want. We have our manager too that allows, in fact, we'll show that right now. So currently, you notice this locked-in bar on the side for toolpaths. So on the bottom, you'll see that we have toolpaths, solids, planes, levels, and recent functions. So same levels that we have here. We're actually going to turn off art, and I'm going to turn off recent functions. Although that can be a tool, especially if you're doing repetitive functions a lot. But you see as I turn those off, now this changed here, toolpaths, solids. I can click through these tabs on the bottom and see the functions of all those tools. And we'll talk more in depth about creating levels and solids and how we manage them in this page. We can change our display. We can show our axis. They're currently all turned on. If I turn them off, you'll see that a lot of those go away. And we'll bring those back. You'll notice that I have created a center point here on my screen. So that is called my world origin. We can show grids. I normally never show grids on my screen. It's a little confusing for me. You'll notice when I turn show grid on, we have these series of dots that appear, and we can change the distance to those dots to have a grid on the screen. Probably helpful in old versions, but not as helpful now. We'll show why it's so much easier. We do our controller position here and different view sheets that we can use. Again, view sheets is a great function for creating CAD files. Not used so much in Mastercam, but there are some uses for sure. We'll go back down here more and look at our display screen a little bit better. So you'll notice we talked about these, the toolpath screen where we're going to create toolpaths, the solid screen where when we create solids will be displayed here. Different planes, we'll talk about what those planes are, and different levels. Levels are an important function. One thing you'll notice, my toolpath screen, there's nothing here. If we go back to our machine tab And let's start out by just picking a milling machine. So we're going to pick a mill. Right now we're just going to use the default mill. You'll notice that this populates in our toolpath screen. Once that populates, the toolpath tab becomes active, and now we start seeing the possible toolpaths that we can use. And we're going to go through those as we create geometry, but you'll notice that it's not just these 4 toolpaths. If I click this down, these are all the available toolpaths in Mastercam. So there's a real variety of toolpaths that can be used, and they're simple to go through and use. So we'll get into those as we create geometry. We'll create geometry first, and then we'll create toolpaths after. You do notice I have this this world coordinate system home. If I grab my mouse and turn a little bit, you'll see that that is a 3-axis plane. I like to start my drawings with that on. And if I right click, I can change it between views. Again, this is all customizable to what you want on that right click screen. If I go back to top, it looks straight down the Z axis. So we're currently looking straight down the Z axis. This is X positive and this is Y positive, just like our milling machine is. And we'll notice the same thing when we do the lathe projects. You could turn this function on and off. We can go back to that toolbar and do it, but the other possibility, which I tend to like, is turning the F9 button. So if I hit F9, that should go away. In this screen here, again, it's completely customizable to the view, the background color. This is where we're going to create our geometry. So when we start drawing, we're going to be drawing in this gray screen currently. And you see our axis coordination here. This is an X positive. The arrow is always pointing the positive direction. This is Y positive. If I turn my screen just a little bit, you'll see that we're looking right down Z positive. Let's go back to our top view. And it appears the Z goes away, but it's just because we're looking down it. Over here we have some shortcuts. We'll talk a little bit about those. Some of these are nice quick tools. You notice like you can select only certain points. You select them by color or entity. We'll talk about those a little bit, but these are just quick action toolbars over here on the right. So I think that covers the basics of our user interface in Mastercam. Again, it's important to know that you can customize most of these. And I will tell you, I've been running Mastercam for many years, and really this default view with these default toolbars is very functional. So it's time to move on to our next video, and we'll get into some more in depth of how to create some geometry and some other functions of Mastercam. And we'll work our way all the way to toolpath. So keep learning and keep making chips.